Tricia, welcome to the Tech Recruitment Podcast. I'm super excited to speak with you today because you have so much experience in recruiting and in sales as well. You are the most recommended person in the United States within the recruiting domain, right? Like that's an achievement itself, and not to mention the other ones. So why don't you tell us, how did you get into recruiting at all?
Like many people, I think there's very few people in the world that decided they wanted to be a recruiter, right? Most of us just fell into it, and I'm no different. I was 19 years old. I had only gone to college or university for 2 years. I knew that I wanted to do some level of high ticket sales, but I had no idea what that was going to be. So I've been doing this for 3 decades. So at this point, I answered an ad in the newspaper, like actually a print ad, and went into an agency. When I walked in the door, I had never heard of recruiting, no exposure to it whatsoever. And in my first interview, the search firm owner explained to me, it was I started as a tech recruiter too, spent my whole career there. But I interviewed and he explained to me, you talk to people, convince them to leave the job that they're in, go to work for our clients, and you make 25%. The fee is 25% of the salary. Well, at 19 years old, I decided in that moment, not only was I going to be a recruiter, but I was going to run an agency like that. So I had other offers. I turned them down, and I called the search firm owner the next day and I said, I'm going to be a recruiter. Do you want me to be a recruiter for you? If you do, I am willing to start on Monday. If you don't, I'm going to go find somewhere else that I can be a recruiter. And I mean, at 19, I didn't know that that's exactly what you want to have from a recruiter, right? So he hired me, and I spent my first 2 years in agency, went 2 years internal, and then went out on my own in 1997.
Wow, that's so inspiring, and your dedication was clear already back then. And over the years, you acquired so many insights and so much knowledge about the industry, right? So
Yeah.
we were discussing before we hit the record button that a lot of people these days transition from non-tech recruiting to IT recruiting, and they may struggle with getting a client to work for. You know, they would like to do it. They see it as a very appealing career, same as you did. But they are not sure how to get the first client to work for. So what would you suggest to such an ambitious recruiter?
Yeah, one of the challenges that we see here in the States is a lot of recruiters, when they are doing business development and they're approaching a potential hiring manager, a CIO, a CTO, a director, when they're reaching out to them, when they first do their initial approach, we find that recruiters have a tendency to go for the kill, right? Like they're getting on the phone with someone, and the expectation is, I want you to tell me all about your company, tell me your openings, sign my agreement, negotiate my terms, interview my candidate. And we go into that first call with this giant agenda. And what happens, I think, is because of that, we oversell. We try to push our value proposition onto this prospective client, or worse yet, we try to push a candidate on them that they didn't ask for, right? So I think that one of the first steps, even though it feels very easy, it makes a huge impact if, when you're doing your initial prospecting, instead of looking for your goal to be that end result of a locked-in requirement, how about we just approach the prospective client with the goal of getting a meeting? That's it. Your only goal is to get a meeting. So when we're reaching out to prospective hiring managers, often we're going to go into that call and say, Michael, I'm a headhunter in the IT space, and I'd like to get on your calendar over the next couple of weeks to discuss your strategic hiring initiatives. Right. So a lot of times I think we look for something that's flowery and pretty, and we've got these positioning statements, and what we're trying to do is convince them to do business with us. But that the timing is wrong for that. We're not trying to convince them to do business with us. We first have to convince them to talk to us. And I think that if we can shift that focus in the initial reach out, your recruiters would have a lot more success.
That's a great suggestion, and it reminds me all of these tools like Apollo or Contact Out. They enable to send us hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of emails over a course of a few weeks. So a lot of people shifted the focus to the quantity instead of quality, as you kind of suggest, or I read between the lines. I'm kind of thinking about how to get the first meeting, because one thing is to send the email as you suggest, but are there some other strategies also that you have tried recently? I'm kind of thinking about, I don't know, just visiting someone at the office. Like, does it still work? Like, just to show up at the office in the reception and ask to meet some person, or is it awkward these days?
It's a little awkward, I think. We have, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but here it's a little bit challenging because even post COVID, if we can call it post COVID, but so much of uh, the entire workforce in the United States is remote. And so showing up at the office, it could be a desolate, empty office, right? Like, I don't know that I would necessarily show up, but I do think you're on the right track of trying to do something that's completely different that your competitors aren't doing. Okay. So, I think to send something in the mail is an outstanding option. Okay. We like to mail things to people. Like when you go to your mailbox, you have bills and ads. That's it. Right. Maybe you get a wedding invitation or a birthday party invitation, and that's very exciting. But we don't really get good things in the mail anymore. So I had a client, one of our private coaching clients, and what he wanted to do, he worked in wealth management, and he wanted to get to the VP of wealth management advisors at Goldman Sachs. So I mean, like that's a hard meeting to get. And he had run his cadence. He had done phone calls and emails and social messaging and text messaging, and he had done all of these things for well over a year and could not get this man to engage. So he's like, I am ready to go all out. What do? I need to get this meeting. So what we recommended, it's a little bit unusual, what we recommended that he do is go out and buy a $200 to $300 carving knife. Okay, like that you would carve a turkey with, right? Like a big fancy carving knife, and it's in like a velvet inlay in a wood box, and it's very posh. And then he went and he had the head of wealth advisory, his last name engraved across the bottom of the blade. Okay, so we take this whole fancy knife and we put a note on it that says, thank you for carving out the time for a short conversation with me. And we FedExed it to him. Right? So that, I want you to imagine, Michael, if that was you. Let's say that you, like, we all get emails all the time from people that are saying, like, let me rank you first on Google, or let me get you 5,000 leads, or let me set up all these appointments. Now, we delete all of those messages, but let's say you kept deleting them and then someone sent you this sort of expensive, spectacular, customized item. Wouldn't you feel obligated, Michael? Wouldn't you feel obligated to take a 15-minute phone call?
Pretty much, yes. I couldn't
Yeah,
know anymore.
right. You can't say no anymore. So that approach ultimately got him the meeting, got him the client, and now he has placed dozens of people with them over the last couple of years. So we have to be creative, right? We can't just send the same messages out, the same boring voicemail messages. It just doesn't work anymore. In order to break through the noise, you have to still be tenacious, but now you have to be really creative too.
Mm. It's interesting how you talk about the noise, and the AI hasn't even started taking place yet, right? This will come, I guess, later this year or next year, 2025, once we start receiving all of these automated calls and AI email sequences and everything. So I guess this human touch will be even more and more important going forward.
Yeah, on that note, let me just tell your listeners, because AI is becoming more and more prevalent, specifically for content development, for email marketing. I mean, it's all over the place. Make sure, no matter what, like ChatGPT, Gemini, Cloud, they're all very good tools. And I would encourage you to use them. Under no circumstances can you ever start an email to a client or a candidate, prospective client, prospective candidate, that says, "Dear Michael, I hope this email finds you well." No, never, ever again. That is the first indicator that your email was written by AI, because unless you're doing advanced prompt engineering, when you ask any AI to write an email for you, it starts with "Dear," and the first sentence is, "I hope this email finds you well." So no matter what, if the AI gives that to you, please delete those parts. Okay.
That's a great tip. I guess soon people will be trained on how to spot the AI generated content.
It's almost instinctual at this point. I mean, like, I've been working in it for literally years, and I can look at a piece of content and know whether it was written by a human being. But I also do good enough prompt engineering that I can pull content out of an AI, drop it into an AI detector, and it comes back 100% human.
Nice, nice. I guess part of the prompt is to inject some mistakes into it, or some grammar mistakes.
It works. The easiest trick, if you do it after the content comes out, is to go through your content and in two, three places, make there be a double space after the period instead of a single space. You don't have to have bad grammar. You don't have to have spelling errors. Just that extra space randomly on a few sentences makes a big difference. Post output.
Oh, that's hilarious. Awesome.
It's fun.
Awesome, awesome, cool. So, coming back to these freelance recruiters getting the first clients, we were kind of looking at the ways how to get the first meeting, right? But then, what happens during the meeting? I mean, there are so many recruiters out there. Some of them specialize in IT. Some of them specialize in some little part of IT. Some of them work through international kind of organizations or brands, so they have some big name to show off. Based on your experience, what would be the best way to make it work during the meeting once the recruiter secures the meeting in the calendar?
Yeah. So, one of the biggest problems, and I'm sure you heard this when I was talking about approaching a prospective client, is that recruiters go too fast.
Mhm.
If you push the sale, you lower your credibility. It becomes transactional. If your goal is just to quickly make random placements at various clients and keep being on the hamster wheel and constantly doing new business development, then you can go fast. But if what you're looking to do is develop long term, deep relationships with these companies so that you can staff their entire IT department, then we have to go slow. So when we schedule that first meeting with a prospective client, and this is probably going to shock your listeners a little bit, we don't allow our recruiters to accept the requirement on the first meeting.
Mhm.
Like, that is so hard to do. It is so hard to do, especially you've done all of this work to get them on the phone. You finally got the meeting, you're on the meeting, and they're like vomiting a requirement onto you. They're like, please, I need this Java developer, go. Let me tell you, I need this Java developer. Here's the tech stack. Here's the comp. Here's what's important. What are your terms? And you're like, oh, yeah, let's slow down a little bit here because I don't work like that. Okay, so in the first discovery meeting, what we like to do is go a little bit bigger. What is right now, if I'm dealing where IT is the cost center, okay, so when we're doing IT placements, it can be cost center or profit center, right? Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So if it is in the cost center, what I'm going to do is start talking to the executive about not in IT, but in the business, the actual business that the IT department is supporting. What are their strategic objectives over the course of the next 6, 12, 18 months? There's no way for me to understand what the bigger picture is of how technology is going to impact and either support or drive the business if I don't start with the business. So I want to understand what the strategic business objectives are, what the challenges are, how IT is integrated into the organization, how they're perceived. Then I'm going to bring it down a level and I'm going to talk specifically about their department. What is the department trying to accomplish? What are the existing projects? What's the tech stack? What's the roadmap? And we're going to go through and get a good understanding of high level company, department level. Now I'm going to dig into the hiring manager, right? So tell me why this is a company that is wonderful to work for. Once I can gauge whether or not that hiring manager is capable of selling the opportunity, then I'm going to ask them, is that why you've stayed with the organization? So once they sell it to me, now I'm going to shift it to them as a person. And now I'm going to take the conversation in a direction of their leadership style, their management style, the things that work very well for them, the things that don't. How do they granularly run their department? So this is going to give me a lot of insight into what the culture fit is. From there, I'm going to talk to them about their overall process. What does the process look like? How many steps are there? Who's involved? Is there any testing that's going to occur? And I'm going to gather a lot of information around the process and any gaps, roadblocks, bottlenecks that exist in the process. Now, at that point, I will open the discussion to how many people are in the department, what is the typical attrition, and what are you overall looking to achieve over the next, 6, 12, 18 months from a staffing perspective. Now I'm done. Okay. What I will say to the hiring manager at that point is, thank you. I think I have a good understanding of the organization, your department, how it fits in, what you're trying to accomplish. Given what I've learned, I'd like to continue the conversation and go a little deeper into understanding your needs. At this stage, are you comfortable with me, or do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me? Now, I'm going to stop that conversation. One thing for all of your listeners, Michael, you are in control if you end the conversation first. Always try to end the conversation first. Okay. So if you say to somebody at the beginning of the call, I've allocated 30 minutes for this, at 2 or 3 minutes before your 30 minutes are up, you need to say to the person, okay, I apologize for the interruption. I need to wrap up this call and I'd like to continue it. So let's look at our calendars and figure out the next time we're going to talk. Now, by going slowly with that, if the hiring manager throws up that job requirement on me, I am literally going to say to them, "Oh, Michael, I'm sorry. There's no way for me to be able to determine if I'm going to be capable of filling your job without gathering a whole lot more information from you about the company and the business and the direction and how realistic you are and your expectations. I need to know all of that before I can answer any questions about my fees or terms."
Wow, this is just so cool. I don't have an opportunity to take detailed notes right now, but I'll re-listen to what you just said, because it's golden, and I hope the listeners of this podcast will just pause now, rewind back 5 minutes, and re-listen, because I like your leading style. I mean, how you can lead the discussion and kind of refocus from the job requirement to the more strategic objective, which also helps you sell yourself as a recruiter. That's just so cool.
So from that point, once we go into the next meeting, once we are having what all of us in the recruiting industry would consider a more traditional job intake, that's the second meeting. Okay. So at that point, we're going to go really deep into the requirement. We're going to cover expectations. Here's what you can expect of me. Here's what I expect from you. And then we don't give them terms. We don't negotiate terms on that call unless they force it. And even if they force it, like if they're like, no, I need you to tell me right now, how much is it going to cost? Well, I mean, Michael, if I have to tell you right now without doing my own due diligence, without looking at, your reputation in the market and doing my research and looking at the feasibility, and not to mention my bandwidth, I'm going to just have to tell you my most expensive price. And I don't think you want that. And I don't want that either, because you're probably not going to accept it. So let me have a couple of days. Let me give this due consideration, and I will put together a detailed proposal for you that covers all of my terms. And I'll be able to give you the terms that I'm the most comfortable with, that is the least investment for you. Or I can give you my top pricing right now. Which would you prefer?
I would wait.
Everybody does. But we need to better manage the client. I think what happens, especially when your recruiters are just getting started, they're like, "Oh my God, I got a meeting. And then they're like, "Okay, yes, I'll take your requirement. I don't care that you're looking for a 15-year Java developer that has architecture experience and will travel all over the world. And I appreciate that you only want to pay them this much money. That's okay. I'll take it, and I'll do it for 15%. No, like that's not how you build a business, especially if you're brand new. Um, Going slow is more important, right? Even though you need that revenue and you need that first deal and you were so excited to have the meeting, we have to take a deep breath and we have to approach this more as a high level strategic business management consultant and not somebody trying to get you ranked first in SEO. Right? It's a completely different caliber of sale. And so I would encourage your listeners, like, don't try to bait with a candidate. Like, don't take a candidate and be like, "Here's my candidate. I got a candidate. You want my candidate? Look at my candidate." No, let's not do that. It is not how we establish long-term, valuable relationships with our clients.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm just kind of thinking about the rates that you mentioned. One thing that I also struggle with is the long-term relationship with the rate that we agreed at the beginning. So at the beginning, for example, had clients where we agreed on some low rate because it was an easy role to fill. We had people in the pipeline, so I was kind of okay to decrease the rate. It made sense also business wise. But then 3 months later, 6 months later, we still are operating under the same contract, and the rate may not make sense anymore because suddenly they come with a much more complicated job requirement. So how do you handle these situations? What would you suggest to people who want either some how they call it, framework agreement, or maybe some agreement for each new order?
Yeah, so let me address first the whole idea of raising your prices. Okay. It's okay when you're first starting out to use the price as leverage to get the business. I'd prefer you don't. Whatever price you give somebody, like you're going to have a really hard time raising that price until you're prepared to lose the client over it. Okay, so if you get to the point where you have a client and you're working at a very low rate because you just got started with them or you just got started as a recruiter, at the point you want to raise the rate, you have to know in your head that there is an opportunity you're going to lose the client. Okay? But let's say you're prepared to because you're sick of working for a pittance, right? So you're prepared to let go of the client, you're going to raise the rate. What we do is first we send out an email that very much looks like a templated, generic, bulk email. Okay, purposefully, we want it to look that way. We want to send it from a bulk system, and there's no customization or personalization to it. And what it is an announcement of an increase in our fees. Okay, let's say I was doing it right now. It is the 14th of March. I might say, as of June 1st, all of our fees have increased 4%. Okay, so we give them ample notice, 8 weeks, 10 weeks notice. We send that email out. Now, the clients that you want to keep, what we do is we instantly send them another personal email that says, ignore the last email that you just received for me. Call me and I'll tell you what we're going to do special for you. So there's a little bit of a setup there, right? Like we're going to raise prices and we tell them all that we're going to raise prices. And then we selectively go to people and say, you know what, you've been a great client and you took a chance on me when I was just getting started in the industry. And I appreciate that so much. So we are raising rates 4% starting June 1st. Your rate is only going to go up 2%, and you're not going to realize the full 4% increase until the 1st of next year. I'm going to do you a solid. I appreciate so much your trust and faith in me. So this isn't going to apply to you. So what we're able to do is we're actually able to frame and set them up for the price increase, make it a little bit farther out or delayed, so it gives them enough time to think about it and decide if they want to continue to work with you. But we also have an opportunity when we do it that way to make them feel special while we raise our rates.
Right. That's a great one. And for those who you are prepared to lose, you because these are the best clients, right? That you want to keep.
So the ones that you want to keep, you do that. The ones that you don't care if you lose, you go directly to them and say, Michael, it is the middle of March. As of April 1st, all of our fees have increased 4%, 6%, 9%. Depends on how low you started, right? So tell them what the increase is going to be. Tell them you will send a new agreement to be executed. And when we're confident and we say, hey, you know what? I know you might not be able to afford it. I mean, there's a little challenge there, right? I know you might not be able to afford it, and I know you might not be able to convince your boss that it's worth it. Unfortunately, I have to raise our prices right now, and it's going to apply to you. So if you need to find a different vendor, I completely understand that. I hope you don't, but I understand the limitations within your organization. If you're able to overcome those, I'd love to continue to support you.
Well, these words and the phrases are just priceless. It's just better than using ChatGPT. So
Sorry, that made me laugh a little bit. Yeah, you know what? ChatGPT is so awesome for creativity, to give you inspiration, to take, like, one of my favorite things to do with it is I will open like Google Docs or Microsoft Word and I'll turn on the voice to text. And then if I'm angry with a candidate or a client, I will rant into the voice to text and I will say all of the horrible things that I wish I could say to that client. And then I will copy and paste it and drop it into ChatGPT and say, hold the essence of this, but write it in a professional manner where the goal is to keep the client. Right? And that's very cathartic. I get to rant and vent, and I still get to get my point across in a way that would be much more acceptable than perhaps my initial voice to text.
that's a good one. So use it as a proxy with your clients, with candidates, with family members, probably as well.
One of the really fun things that we're doing with GPT right now, and this will work in any of the major language models. As a recruiter, and having done this for so long, I have screamed from the rooftops to anybody that will listen to me. You do not control candidates. You do not control clients. This is their livelihood, right? So I don't want you to force somebody into a job, and I don't want you to try and force somebody to hire someone. Here's a big news flash. No matter how good of a recruiter you are never going to convince somebody to take a job that they don't want. No matter how good of a recruiter you are never going to convince a CIO to extend an offer to a candidate that they don't want. We're not going to be able to do that. So in the past, everything has been focused much more around activity. I can't control the outcome, but I can control my activity. So the more people I can get scheduled for first interviews with my clients, the more placements I'm going to make. And I can step back from having that control at the tail end of the process. Now, with GPT, there's an increased level of influence that we can have that we've never had as recruiters. So I would encourage all of your listeners to start asking every client, every candidate, okay? It'll feel like a throwaway question, but just look at them. And I'll ask you, Michael. So, Michael, here's a kind of weird question. Have you ever taken a personality profile?
Yeah, actually, yes.
What are you?
So it was this GTI something. I don't recall the letters anymore, but
like a Myers-Briggs, right? Where like ENTF or something like that. Now, let's say you, like in this specific situation, you didn't know what you were, right? Like you don't remember what it is. I can go and take your LinkedIn profile and your Facebook page and anything else I can find that you've written. I can drop that into GPT and say, making the assumption that this text was self-populated and self-written, and recognizing that you're a large language model and you're only guessing, what is this person's personality type, right? And now GPT can, if you can't tell me what you are, GPT can guess what you are. So now if I do that with my candidates and I do that with my hiring managers, now what I can do is I can take the job description, the profile or resume of the candidate, my notes from the conversation with the hiring manager, my notes from the interview with the candidate, my assessment of both of their personality profiles. And now I can say, given the job, given the candidate's background, given both of their personality profiles, what questions are going to be asked during this interview? And the answers are phenomenal. Now I can take that a step further and say, given this candidate's personality, recognizing that I only want honest answers, what's the best way for my candidate to answer these questions? So now I have a custom level prep for an interview that far exceeds anything I have ever been capable of on a desk in 30 years.
That's just mind-blowing, really, because we are also sending some interview preparation guidelines, but they are very static. They are for all candidates the same. I mean, for one client, the same PDF document with some standard questions to prepare for. But what you say is completely next level, where the document is personalized for each candidate with answers already pre-made. That's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, but let me pause you there, because I would not encourage you to send a prep document.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't. When we do as much work as we have to do to get to a candidate that fits, and then get them interested and engaged, and then get the client interested and engaged in our candidate, at this point, the biggest advantage that you can offer your candidate is the prep. Right? The better you prep your candidates, the better they're going to perform on an interview. We do more interviews in a week than most of our candidates do in their lifetimes, right? They're not professional interviewers, and they need help. They need help with wordsmithing. They need help with framing things. They need to practice answering, and they need somebody to tell them, that didn't sound great. Maybe we can shift it to this. Or you're talking a little bit too fast, or you're talking a little bit too much, or like, but I don't know that, and I can't direct and advise the candidate in a generic document. So I would encourage all of your people to heavily, heavily weight the time that you invest in a prep. I can't prep a candidate for a first interview in under an hour. It takes me an hour to prep them. But that's where the relationship is made. Right now, you're coming from this position of you're an expert. You are the advisor. So rather than giving them a document that they're not going to read, or that they're just going to peruse through and it's not going to land with them, let's get on the phone and let's actually have a conversation with them, do a little bit of mock interview, figure out what their concerns are, build the trust so that when we get to the end of the deal, we have a little bit of influence and we can encourage them to take the job. We can't do that by just sending them a prep document.
That's true. That's true. And this could be also seen as some career coaching, right? As something that gives the value to the candidate, even if he or she is not hired by the client. So I'm kind of thinking now whether this is something that the candidate could also pay for as a part of career coaching. Is it some paid service that the candidate pays, I don't know, $100 for or more?
In our private coaching practice, we have a couple of people that own search firms, and they have built career coaching arms to their companies. It's a very, very nice supplemental complimentary offering. If you decide to do it, what we want to do is we want to put a page on the website that is not accessible through navigation. You don't want your clients, you don't want it visible to your clients that you do career coaching. Now, there is one major standard that you have to adhere to. You cannot be paid by a candidate to help them in their career and then be paid by a client to place that same person. Can't do it. Okay. It's one or the other. So if you're doing career coaching, we charge like in between $5,000 and $15,000 for that, not $100, $5,000 to $15,000. And it is custom, personal, private direction for someone in your industry that needs help making a job change. And that is prepping, debriefing, making decisions, resignation prep, accepting the counter or accepting the offer, how to handle the counter offer when it comes in, how to put your best foot forward when you're starting the new job, right? Like there's a lot of career coaching. So if you have that separate line of business and it's on your website and you can't get to it through navigation, now what we do is we give the link to any unqualified candidate. Any candidate that doesn't fit a job you're working on, now you can drive them to that page and maybe they'll pay you for career services, but our fees are too big for placement. I would focus on placement and add that career coaching piece as a hidden supplement that you could individually drive candidates to that you didn't want for your search practice.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I don't even recall how we got to this point, and I like how kind of the next steps unfold as we progress. So it's just really cool how many opportunities are out there in recruiting, right? We started with kind of onboarding new clients. Now we're talking about how to lead the clients and make more placements. At the same time, there are all these other kind of supplemental businesses that we can also build. At the same time, it's kind of difficult to stay focused. And I've seen recruiters jump from one role to another. They start each contingent search from scratch, and then they may be burned out because they cannot really reuse candidates. So what would you advise in such case? Like how to stay focused within one area, within one niche? Like how big niche is still acceptable, or how small niche to go for? Or I'm not sure how to ask this question, but I guess
Yeah, I see where you're going. First of all, I think a lot of recruiters get really bogged down in what should my niche be, right? That's a huge roadblock. And if you've been at this for a while, usually, even if you decide what your niche is, you're going to change it. Like you're not married to it. And usually the way that real niches are developed is because you have one really good client in one space and you get a lot of business. And then when you're recruiting people for them, you develop more relationships and that leads to more requirements. And a good niche actually develops organically. Right? It doesn't have to be, I only place people that do specifically .NET development in insurance companies. Like that would be too narrow. Like I don't think I would go just in that direction, particularly not as a tech recruiter. So in tech, you can go by a specific tech stack. You can go by a specific industry. You can go by a specific geography. You can try and narrow it down for all of them and get too narrow. But ultimately, I think technology recruiters have one kind of bad thing going for them. Okay, if I'm a tech recruiter and I focus on individual contributors, staff level people. Let's say my primary focus is programmers, or my primary focus is database administrators, or my primary focus is network administrators. It's not the same thing as in other industries, right? Like if I'm looking at an accountant is an accountant is an accountant. But a programmer that works in a Unix environment versus a Microsoft environment are two totally different people. Like they might as well be a lawyer and a manufacturing manager. Like they're just totally different people. So I think one of the challenges that we run into, and you touched on it with candidate reusability, uh, it's a misnomer. I mean, you have to be so narrow in your niche, in your geography, in your level, and then you have to do this for a decade or more before you truly have candidate reusability. Like where I can take a candidate and either, like I could build a desk right now where I could have one candidate interview at multiple clients. That's a nice thing when we can do that. But that's a very hard thing to do in tech. I think you limit yourself too much if you try to go too narrow in tech. I think we need to be broader. uh, what kind of people in tech do you typically place, Michael?
So, for example, DevOps and cloud engineers. So, cloud is now on the rise. Lots of companies look for cloud engineers, but this is also a bit too narrow. On the other side, I was just talking to one DevOps or cloud manager, and as a part of the message was like, "Hey, I see you specialize in cloud," and the response was, "Oh, cloud is quite broad." And I was thinking, oh my, it's still broad. So how narrow should I go? Should I just focus on AWS cloud engineers in fintech companies? I mean, that's really narrow.
I don't think so. I don't think you should go that narrow. I mean, in my opinion, and I spent, 25 years as a tech recruiter, right? So this is actually a space that I am intimately aware of. I think that if I was going to focus anywhere in tech, I'd focus in tech leadership. I mean, you might as well get the bigger fees, right? Like, so I would constantly be trying to push up in the organization. If I can place CIOs, CTOs, VPs of IT, or if I can place the head of software engineering, like those are the kind of roles that I want. If I'm doing staff level placements, the easiest way to have more reusability or to put less effort into your placements is to develop a couple of key accounts where you're placing all of the tech people into those environments. And then where it becomes easier is the company really well, the interview process really well. The tech stack is still going to change depending on what part of the IT department they're in, but your job will be easier because you're making multiple placements at the same client. Other than that, it's pretty challenging. Like anybody that's out there saying, okay, I'm going to go super narrow for candidate reusability, probably doesn't have enough experience in our industry.
Yeah. That's a very, very interesting insight. It also comes down probably to when to niche down or how to choose the niche. Probably at the beginning, some focus makes sense, and then as you grow, you can open up the niche. Is that also something you've seen with some of your clients?
Yeah, I have one of our private coaching clients. I adore her. She changes her mind what she wants to work on. And so she'll go onto her website. Like last week she was making ag tech calls. Like right. So she went onto her website and she changed it so that it said ag tech. And she did a whole week's worth of marketing calls to ag tech companies. And if they went and looked at her website, it said she does ag tech. If you would have done that, I don't know, 3 months ago, it said she did marketing tech. Like she just, whatever she feels like working on, she's not committed to anything. And she just will go in and make the changes to her site and go in a different direction for a little bit.
That's so cool. That's so fresh, So some
Right.
people change their jackets. So that's how they do it these days. Virtually online. That's awesome. Cool. And speaking of these marketing calls, some people may be kind of worried about making the cold calls these days. People are used to texting on WhatsApp or somewhere, right? And then when they are supposed to pick up the phone, they struggle. So are you referring to these marketing calls when you call on the reception and then someone picks up and you ask for someone who is responsible for HR, something like this?
Yes and no. So, yes, we're going to pick up the phone and we're going to call the main number, but we're not going to ask for HR and we're not going to ask for anyone by title. So, I mean, the internet is vast. You should be able to figure out the name of the person that you suspect is the hiring manager or the person that you want to reach out to. I would never recommend calling into an organization and being like, "Hi, Michael, can I speak to the VP of HR?" They're going to be like, "What are you calling for?" Like, do your research. Do your research, know who you're calling. When you make that type of a cold call, always identify yourself by your full name before you ask any questions. And a little hack, a little trick is give your location. So if I was calling you, I might say, "Hi, Michael. This is Tricia Tamkin from Chicago. Can you connect me to Bill Smith?"
Mm.
Okay, so
Mm.
we're all about telling the truth. Like we never ever recommend that anybody makes something up. Don't do that to yourself. Just tell the truth all the time. I really am Tricia Tamkin. I really am in Chicago. Okay, but by saying that, by giving my full name first and saying where I'm from, it gives the implication that I'm internal. Okay. So the receptionist or the gatekeeper is going to feel in that moment like I'm an employee. And so even if they don't have a Chicago office, right, I can just, "This is Tricia Tamkin from Chicago. Connect me to Bill Smith." And so it's not I'm not asking, I'm directing. Okay. I'm telling the receptionist what to do. I'm the CEO of a company. This is a receptionist, right? Like I can be kind and sweet and nice and nurturing, and I want to do all of those things. But I also don't want to go in and say, "Hi, my name is Trisha, and I'm just, could you possibly maybe do me a favor and connect me to Bill Smith?" No one's gonna say yes. No one's connecting you, right? Like the confidence that you bring to the call actually matters for whether or not you're going to be connected to the person that you're looking for. So be strong, be confident, right? "This is Tricia Tamkin from Chicago. Can you please connect me to Bill Smith?" Great. So, yes, call in. But what we want is actually a cadence. Okay. So, I will usually start, and there's a lot of right ways to start, but me personally, we call it a 1-2 punch. So, I will leave a voicemail and I will instantly send an email. So, in the voicemail, all I will say is, "My name is Tricia Tamkin. I'd like to have a conversation with you, Michael. I am also going to send you an email to michael@blah blah blah.com. If you'd prefer to communicate with me electronically, please respond there or call me 630-240-4454. Any of your listeners want to call me, that's really my phone number. And I really answer the phone." But when I leave that message, then when I'm going to send the email subject line is "per my voicemail this morning." And all that's in the body of the email is, "Michael, I left you a message this morning. As promised, we can communicate electronically here." And that's it. So 1-2 punch. Then I wait 3 days and then I call again. And then I wait 3 days and I send an email. Then I wait 3 days and I send LinkedIn or some level of social interaction. Then I wait another 3 days and I send a text message. Then I wait another 3 days and I call again. And I basically just keep waiting 3 days and I keep reaching out until they either agree to have a meeting with me or tell me to go pound sand. Either one is good.
Oh, it's just so cool, so cool. And I could listen to you for the next 2 hours, it feels like, because you have so amazing insights and so practical and so hands-on. But also, I kind of promised you this will not take longer than an hour. And I guess we just reach now at the hour. So I guess we will need to leave all the other 55 questions that I have prepared for you.
Well,
you
that
so
is
much.
lovely. It has absolutely been my pleasure to speak with you today. And Michael, if you would like to do this again at a later point, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I am full of opinions, both solicited and unsolicited.
Awesome, awesome. And maybe we'll have a chance to meet in Chicago once, for a coffee. That would be awesome.
That would be terrific. So thank you very much for having me. It has been my pleasure, and I'll look forward to us talking again in the future.
Thank you. And just a quick question before we wrap it up. Where can people find a bit more about you? I will include the LinkedIn on in the comments. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or include?
Yeah, I will. I'll send you a link to our website, moreessentials.com. More is two O's, but you can learn all about me and my partner, Jason Tebow, and all of our programs for classes and coaching. And we speak all over the world. And so you can find out a whole bunch of other information on our site.
Awesome. So I'll include the website also together with your LinkedIn profile. Great. Well, thanks a lot. I'll also just go to make some of these outreach emails or calls based on what you just mentioned. I feel so pumped up now as well. So I guess listeners also enjoyed all the all the.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for having me. It was absolutely a pleasure, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. See you soon again. Bye. Goodbye.
Bye bye.